Now, the United States is considering blocking beef and cattle-related exports from Nigeria to countries including Ivory Coast, Ghana, South Africa, and Senegal. How did that come to you? Let me begin with you, Mr. Umar.
It's absolutely shocking that you wake up one day and some people just 10,000 miles away behind the desk forming some sort of opinion and trying to make decisions that would affect the lives of people in rural communities far away. I mean, it's very shocking that such revelations are happening nowadays.
What about you, Mr. Ezeiruaku? What do you make of this?
I think it's a fragmented decision or recommendation that has been made, because it still is a recommendation. It hasn't been taken on as a decision. But for someone to think of it is concerning, especially with the volume of beef export from Nigeria, low as it is. If you're targeting that, my question would be, what else? What exactly is the goal for this? Because if you're looking to combat, as one of the measures to combat, terrorism, looking to place Nigeria as a country of concern, targeting our beef exports would not be something that I'll be looking at. So the concern is, what else? What exactly is this? Where exactly is this headed? Because the volume and value of what we do in terms of cattle or meat-related exports is quite low to be a target. Yeah.
Now, building on what you just said, does this set a precedent for regional sanctions, where the United States influences third-party African nations to enforce its policy on Nigeria? I know it's just a recommendation, but you never know. You never can tell how far that recommendation will go. So what's your take on this, really?
So I think, first, the thing is, yes, while it's an advisory proposal, it's going to affect African farming, right? And allowing ourselves to become pressured, this level of external interference, as my brother has just said, is not. I don't think it's acceptable, because it affects not just regional. It affects regional trade. It has the potential to affect what we do under the Africa Free Trade, Africa Continental Free Trade area, right? So it's not to be taken lightly. We have to look at the implications. One, even if we're not selling anything overseas, we're still doing business amongst ourselves as within the regional bloc, ECOWAS, and then with the opening of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, we're seeing more business being done across the continent itself. So ordinary herders would be affected if armed groups are not targeted, right? So contextually, while Boko Haram is the link, but centrally you're saying that not everybody who is a herder or who does cattle business is a threat to the country. The Ministry of Agriculture, of course, is looking at this as almost a 3 trillion naira industry, and is positioning for pastoral business around herding. How does that become a threat? So, as a nation, we need to engage. These are signals that some diplomatic, what I'd love to term commercial diplomacy, needs to begin to get in place, right? There's no hiding the fact that China, Russia, and other countries are making inroads into the continent, and Nigeria is one of the largest markets and has a driving force in whatever happens on the continent. So if you pressure Nigeria, then you're making inroads to other places. So yeah, we have to be clear on where we're headed, and we just have to ensure that this, as we're doing right now in the media, to ensure that, look, this move is not exactly the best advice that anyone would give or even consider, because it affects a wide gamut of Nigerians beyond what one would call the terrorists.
All right, that's interesting. I mean, you're saying that we need to be clear about where we are herded. And that's quite interesting, because if we're having this bilateral, maybe this relationship, we need to know what we are doing so we don't offend one another. Okay, so let me come to you, Mr. Umar. Is there evidence that export revenues materially fund armed herdsmen? Because if you would want to take a position in that regard, then it would probably mean that you have information, data, or what have you, that somehow there is a connection or a relationship with them. So do you think there is evidence that, export revenues fund armed herdsmen, and would a ban realistically, disrupt the network?
So I cannot speak for the Nigerian government, and I cannot speak for the security agencies. But in my opinion, things that we see, things that we hear on the news, it's absolutely certain that the bandits or the Boko Haram terrorists are not really after herding cattle nowadays. They're after kidnappings and actually getting some ransom. So it's absolutely. It's not. I am just a farmer, and I cannot tell you if we have those facts and figures. We actually see what we're seeing in the news, and what we're seeing online in the social media. But I can absolutely tell you that from what we're seeing, that it doesn't look as if the bandits or the terrorists are actually getting their financing from cattle herding. That is absolutely just some sort of misinformation that, as I've said earlier, people far away sitting behind the desk and forming some sort of opinion about things that they really do not know about.
Oh, things they do not really know about. Okay, so is the U.S. using the Christian persecution label as a diplomatic lever to sort of force Nigeria away from the BRICS, Russia orbit and probably bring it back into the Western, monopoly? Is that what you think is going on? Is the U.S. just using everything within its reach to negotiate itself back into the picture? Is that what you're saying? What do you think?
Absolutely. We think there's a bigger game that is happening, behind the scenes. There's an end game. Absolutely for them. It's what they're saying is absolute nonsense to me, because it's far from the reality that is happening on the ground. And I feel that they're just using it to achieve their own, sort of foreign policy that they've set up, around Nigeria.
Okay, Mr. Ezeiruaku, let me come back to you. Now, this was not the only measure the Congress highlighted. This is part of the economic lever, but there were other measures, whether you want to look at legal reform and also some talk about, public naming of groups or individuals who are responsible for religious violence. Let me get your thoughts on this. Do you accept these other ones? Are there some of the measures you think, yeah, we should work with, and there are those we shouldn't even, talk about?
Well, traditionally, counterterrorism has focused on maybe asset freezing, banking sanctions, things around designation of individuals and facilitators, right? So it reflects reality and acknowledges, let's say, how groups operate largely outside of formal trade systems, right? And receiving funding and logistical support. So yes, there are things to look at. Those are things to look at. Rather than taking this broad approach, right? If you look at this from a broad economic pressure can actually radicalize rather than pacify, right? Because if pastoral livelihoods are harmed, grievances will increase, informal and illicit markets will expand automatically. What will happen is that armed groups will just get new recruiting narratives. So not only damaging food supply, so all alternatives need to be looked at. All alternatives need to be looked at from traditional methods of dealing with such matters. Well, I would stick to trade. I'm not a security expert, but I do know that there's a strong relationship between security and livelihoods. But I would say that realistically, this symbolic leverage that is being proposed is not operational counterterrorism. It may be a signal to seriousness in Abuja. It may be a way to satisfy domestic political pressures and audiences in the United States. It may be a way of adding pressure alongside diplomatic security engagements, to say maybe to bring to bring the presence of the United States, make it stronger in its negotiations on doing business with Nigeria for whatever they may be looking to access from the country and keep the channels of trade open. But really, it's not a meaningful way of defunding any terrorist group. It's not a meaningful way of trying to end farmer herder violence, or nor is it a substitute for intelligence-led security operations, right? So that's really my opinion at this point.
All right, Mr. Umar, let's talk about livestock now. Nigeria's livestock minister revealed recently that Nigeria possesses the untapped potential to generate over 3.2 billion naira in annual red meat export. Now, that is not even so much, if you ask me. Yet, per current data, the country generated around $200,660 in total meat and edible offal exports in 2021. Now, if you look at World Bank data on frozen meat, it's even less than that, over $30,000. That's what the World Bank data gives us. Now, beg your pardon, talk to us about why this is happening. Why aren't we able to, press and get more from that particular sector?
Absolutely. So if you look at it holistically, we need to look at other countries, how they're doing it, and what we have to, draw the line on what we're doing absolutely wrongly. There are three key factors that affect, the productivity of livestock. We're looking at the breed itself, we're looking at the animal health, and we're looking at the feed. So one thing that, for you to export, there's certain standards and certain quality that you actually have to meet up with. And I think this government is doing brilliantly on the issue of livestock, especially, when it comes to the issue of exports. There's a lot of interest that have come to Nigeria regards to export of beef, grass, and so on and so forth. And I think these are the three key things that Nigeria needs to tackle to be able to, meet up with the kinds of standards. Because every cattle every cattle that you're going to export, you need to have a history of, where it is coming from, the vaccinations, what it is eating, how organic it is actually feeding. And, it's quite different from, from what is being done in other countries. Nigeria, we have a lot of pastoralists, about 95% of our livestock are, by pastoralists. And this is really, really, affecting that particular sector. So moving into things like ranching is actually something that it's really going to help to curb, such issues of having less revenues. Because, if you go to other countries like South Africa and you see what they're doing when it comes to the livestock, it's quite impressive. So we need to just, replicate what others are doing in Nigeria.
All right, thank you so much for your thoughts. Abdulsalam Umar, founder and CEO, Matura Agro. Thank you also, Collins Ezeiruaku, Trade Ambassador, International Trade Facilitation Association. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time on the show today.